Hey y'all, it's Chris here with Rockin Farm. Today we are going to be touching back on the topic of how to get your homestead. This has turned into a bit of a video series. I've got 4 videos out already. I'm going to go ahead and post the link to that playlist in the upper right hand corner of your screen. Now, so far in this series, we've visited a few different topics. Video number 1 was basically about having a change in attitude. Video number 2 was about doing kind of a heart check and a gut check to see if homesteading was really right for you. Video number 3 picked up on talking about some of the possible homesteading skills you could learn. Video number 4 started talking about actually finding the place where you wanted to have your homestead. Now, I wasn't talking about specific properties in that video. I was just kind of talking about like where in the United States or possibly even the world do you want to live. Now in this video, we're finally going to start talking about the specific things to look for in a homesteading property. What makes it good? What makes it bad? Here's the deal, y'all. This ended up being a ton of information. So we're actually going to have to split video 5 here into 3 different videos. We're going to cover the first 3 points today, another 3 or 4 points in video number 2, and another 3 or 4 points in video number 3. I'm going to go ahead and label all these what to look for in a property, but they are going to be what to look for in a property, video 5A, 5B, 5C, and I'm going to try and drop them back to back to back to just get all this information out for you. So for the next week and a half, we're going to be touching on getting your homestead, and it's going to be in this what to look for specifically in your property mini video series. Before we jump into this, do me a quick favor and hit that subscribe button, click that notification bell, and as always, do not forget to go check out the website, rockin8farm.com. All right, y'all, so the way I'm going to kind of try to run this is I'm going to bring up a point like, hey, think about this. And then if that applies to my property, I can kind of give you a look at what it was that we liked about the place that we ended up finding as it applies to the specific topic. So one of the first things that you're going to want to consider, and obviously this seems like kind of a no-brainer, but you know, it's not necessarily, that's going to be price. And when we talk about price, I think it's almost better to really talk about cost, because there's a lot more associated with owning a homestead than just like the price, the initial mortgage type price. Now on the property that we ended up living on, we got a really good deal on it. It's a little over 5 acres, less than 6 though. I think it's like 5.36 acres. Had a 2,200 square foot house on it. It had a barn, it had a shed, it had a well with a well house. It was fully fenced on 3 sides, but the house was run down, the barn was run down, the fences were run down. They didn't want to do any work to it. They really wanted to sell it as is. So we ended up getting a pretty good price on the property overall. Now you can save yourself a lot of money by going with raw land, but it's also a lot tougher to get a loan for raw land. They want a lot more money down. The more improved land is, the more expensive it's going to be, but when you factor in what it would cost you to do some of those improvements, it may actually be cheaper to buy the improved land. You also need to think about the state that you're looking at or the location that you're looking at, and think about taxes in the long term. Here in the state of Texas, we do not have a state income tax. So when I get my paycheck from my job, there's no income tax that comes out. So the way the state of Texas gets its money is through property tax. Property taxes are very high here in the state of Texas. The more your property is worth, the higher those taxes are going to go. So you're going to need to weigh out all of those little cost benefits. You know, I mean, hey, I found a piece of land and it has a house on it, but the house has no electricity and no running water. But then we looked into what it costs to do a well and what it costs to run power to the property or put in a solar system. And by the time we added all that up, we found a place down the road that was cheaper. Just take all that into account. What is it I need for my property? How much does it cost? What is it lacking? How much are those things going to cost? And then you might find that buying an unimproved piece of property and doing what you need to do to it is better in the long run. But those are the finances that you're going to need to work out on your own. Now, we talked about price first because, well, quite frankly, if you can't afford it, you just can't afford it. And why are we even having the conversation? But in all honesty, when we're actually talking about like, yeah, I mean, I'll figure out the money thing. So let's just, what do I need, Chris? What does a homestead need? Y'all, one thing is absolutely the most important. That's water. See, there's a lot of stuff you can do to ignore a bad neighbor or to avoid encroaching cities. There's things that you can do in regards to, like, there's no access to power. I mean, we've got generators, we've got solar, there's options. But if a property has no water and no real feasible access to water, run. Water is the key to everything on a homestead, y'all, and if you have to be bringing in truckloads of water, it's going to get real old and real expensive real fast. There are places in Texas where drilling a well is just not realistic. The deeper you got to go and the more rock you got to go through, the more expensive it's going to be. And we got places here in Texas that are nothing but rock for a couple thousand feet. That is one expensive well. So you may have just priced yourself out of water. Now, is a well or city water the only form of water? No, of course not. If you've got a lake, a river, a stream, something running through the property that's a reliable source of water, well, then we've got access to water. We can figure that out. We can work with that. There's also a very good possibility that you've got some sort of a seep or something like that. It means you got a high water table, and drilling that well ain't going to cost too much. So if you've got water on the property, we can figure everything else out. I'm telling y'all, we can build soil in a place that has horrible soil. We can figure out electricity in a place that ain't got no electricity. But if you ain't got water, you're in bad shape. Now, this here is one of the reasons that we bought this particular piece of property. And I'm going to tell you right now, this well is not functioning currently. But it was functioning at one time, and we knew with a little work we could get it running again. The first thing we found out about it, because I've been working on it recently, is that the wiring was cut. So I've run new wire, and then I discovered that the breakers over there are bad, so I'm going to replace the breakers. And if replacing the breaker doesn't work, then I'll go ahead and replace that pressure switch, because that's a cheap part. And if we're still not working at that point, well, that's when I'll bring in the professional. But here's the bottom line with having a well is the potential is there to save me a lot of money. I called one old fella and asked him if he'd come out here and take a look at it. I could tell he really didn't want to come out and take a look at it because he immediately started talking to me about how many thousands of dollars it could potentially cost to fix this well. And I think he threw that scare me away number out there. He was like, oh, it could be $6,000 to fix that well. Well, y'all, if I could use well water to water my garden, water my orchards, and water my livestock, I think my return on investment on $6,000 to repair this well would still only be about 4 years. That's how much money we spend on water, especially during the hot summer months. It is not uncommon for me to have a water bill that is well over $500 during like June, July, August, September. Like 50 or 60 bucks of that is what we're using inside the house, and the rest of it is the garden, the trees, and the livestock that are drinking up water by the gallons each day. So if I can drop a $550 bill down to $50, or let's just say $100, still, times that times 4 months, stretch that out over 4 years, I done paid myself back for the $6,000 I spent repairing this well. And to be honest with you, I don't think it's going to cost that much to repair this well anyhow. So one of the things we really liked about this property is that it did have a well, but it was also connected to and I'm going to use air quotes here, a city water supply. Obviously, there's that part of me that really enjoys the fact that even if the power goes out, like if I get up at 4:30 a.m. to go to work and the power's out, I can still take a shower. It might not be a warm shower, but I can still take a shower and then go to work. You know, if the power's out to your well house, there ain't no shower happening and you're going to work smelling like yesterday. One of the other things that I really like about having a city water supply is that here in the state of Texas, if you are going to be doing things on your property where you're going to be entertaining the public, let's say you have a wine tasting house, or maybe you're doing like a movie night at the farm and you're having folks over, well, you got to give people an opportunity to use the bathroom and wash their hands. Here in the state of Texas, it has to be a potable water supply that's used to wash those hands. And if you're doing any kind of food preparation, that's supposed to be potable water as well. Now, even though the water that comes out of a well might be unbelievably amazing, it's not considered potable by the state of Texas if it hasn't been disinfected and all the things that a city water supply does. The last thing I need is to have my business shut down because I'm not providing a safe water supply. So I can have the well in order to take care of the livestock, take care of the gardens, take care of the orchards, but then I can have that city water supply to feed the house, and I can have that city water supply to run things that have to do with the future of our business and bringing folks onto the property for you pick fruit operations, etc., etc. So that was our answer to making sure that we had water, is that we found ourselves a property that had a city provided water supply, and yet also had a backup water supply, which was the sole water supply for this entire property for several decades before they came out and ran water mains down the street. All right, y'all, the last thing I want to touch on in this particular video is having access to the property. Most states have laws in place that tell somebody that they can't deny someone access to their own property. But I kind of want you to put yourselves in the shoes of that person who has to have a road cut through their property so you can access yours. I mean, by the time you get done putting in your 10-foot wide, 400-foot long road, from their perspective, all they can see is, I just lost 4,000 square feet of pasture because of this jerk and their need to get back to their property. That might be problems you don't necessarily want with your neighbors. Now, for us in particular, it's not an issue. Back yonder quite a ways, there is a state highway. That state highway drops onto my road here, which is a county maintained road that walks itself right up to my property, my gate. I don't have any rivers or gullies or ravines that I have to cross to get over to my property. There's one little low water crossing over there a little ways, but even during the worst of rainstorms, it's still totally passable. So for me in particular, access to my property is just really not an issue. Now, why am I cutting this video off here? Well, the bottom line of it is, y'all, if you can afford the property, if you have access to water and you can easily access the property, we can figure out almost everything else. So we're going to cut this video off here, but I do have another 7 or 8 points to go over. So we'll cover those on the next 2 videos in this kind of part A, part B, part C of the 5th part of this series. Like I said earlier, I'm going to try and drop those back to back to back and just get them all out for you. But we're going to cut this one off right here. So this has been Chris the Rockin' Farm. And until I see y'all in a couple of days, be happy and live healthy.